to our Network and Learn. So welcome. This is Network and Learn from the UDL IRN. I am Sue Harden, and I'm delighted to have all of you here. I'm going to pull up my presentation and share with you who's with us tonight and give you a little introduction to what you're going to be in for this evening. So this session is entitled In the Rearview Mirror. Oops, we've got to go back there. It's one district's thoughts about year one UDL implementation. And you can see we have a wonderful panel here with us tonight. I will be your moderator. My name is Sue Harden, and I work at Macomb Intermediate School District, and I'm also serve on the UDL IRN Board of Directors and a member of our Professional Learning Committee. And in fact, I have some colleagues here with me tonight. I'll introduce them in just a moment. This evening, we are excited to welcome Frazier Public Schools to our Network and Learn site. The Frazier School District is just finishing up, wrapping up this June, year one implementation. We have 5 panelists who represent a cross-section of Frazier staff, but these are just the tip of the iceberg. We have over 43 Frazier staff in our implementation year one, or our cohort one, and they represent K-8 for all grades, all schools participating in the UDL implementation this school year. Next year, we'll be adding on the high school and additional team members as well. So I'd like to just give a shout out to all of our Frazier friends who are watching in the audience. This is the folks that are here are your representatives. Your good work is important and valued, and we value everybody on our cohort one implementation team. As you'll see tonight, this is really a top-down, bottom-up approach to UDL implementation. So we have with us tonight Dr. Donna Anderson. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction at Frazier, and Julie Ritchie, a kindergarten teacher. We also have Jared McGuffey. He is our 21st century coach. And we have Aaron Sutherland, one of our elementary principals. And joining Julie is Mandy Taylor. Oh my goodness, I've got all tripped up, who is also a kindergarten teacher, and they are partners. And so we will have the opportunity tonight to hear from each and every one of them from their perspective about how year one implementation is going. Move on to the next slide here. Joining us, as I mentioned, we have 2 of our UDL IRN Professional Learning Committee members. Alex Hollingshead is going to be working the Twitter this evening, so she'll be bringing questions from those who are watching it via live stream on YouTube, or if anybody chooses to use Twitter to talk about the events tonight. And Corinne Hauer will be monitoring the chat in the webinar itself. So this is a great time to mention, if you've got questions for anyone on our panel, please drop them in the chat. If you're watching the webinar live, or if you're watching on YouTube, use our Twitter handle, and that is UDLIRN. And we will be monitoring for questions this evening and welcoming your input and you sharing your ideas and questions with this remarkable team. So we will be doing that periodically throughout the event tonight. We'll stop after each panelist talks and bring questions in for that person, or you can ask questions of anyone in the team, it's fine, but we'll be pausing at least 4 or 5 times throughout the evening to take your questions so that you can find out more about what's interesting to you in this year one implementation process. So tonight, to kick us off, we welcome Dr. Donna Anderson. As I mentioned, she's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, and she really is the driving force behind this implementation in Frazier. And so she's going to share with you from her perspective what it feels like for sort of bringing everybody together under one big umbrella, thinking about all the pieces that go into UDL implementation, and some of her ahas and awakenings through the school year. So Donna, I'm going to mute my microphone and I'm going to send it off to you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. First of all, welcome everyone. I want to talk a little bit about, from a district perspective, our why, and for Frazier Public Schools, and why we are, why we're here. We have a new superintendent that started this year. I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of a technical thing going on. Anyway, we had our new superintendent, Ms. Wozniak, is new superintendent for us this year, but was the assistant superintendent in my role last year. So we've had a great flow of information, and having a new superintendent meant us bringing our community stakeholders together to really talk about our portrait of a graduate and really establishing what's important for our district, for our students when they get that handshake at graduation. So what you see on your screen right now is our why. What's important to Frazier Public Schools and our staff and our community for our learners is really looking at those individual students. And as we pulled our stakeholders together, we pulled students, we pulled our staff, our community members, our school board. Everyone went through a common experience. And this graphic that you see on the screen right here is really a version of the outcome of what happened with our strategic planning. And if you notice, we have the universal design for learning, which came through and through all of our discussions when we talked about our Frazier learners. Also within this icon, you'll see little circles within the middle, and those are what we call our 6 C's, really important characteristics in our learners that we want when they get that handshake, our students to be confident in their critical thinking, with their communication skills, with their creativity, their character, and having good citizenship and collaboration. So all that went in. And as we talked about how do we get that graduate to have all of those characteristics, UDL came, it's very obvious that the Universal Design for Learning principles is our way to get there. So what we did as a district was we developed a strategic plan, and we're still in the process of establishing some goals. But what I can tell you is, we're a smaller size district, but what we do have is a comprehensive plan. We have 1 high school, 1 middle school, 6 elementary schools, and all of those buildings have teams of UDL, what we call our UDL teams, with some growth in coming years. So from a district perspective, we really wanted to make sure we were supporting our staff and our students to get to that end. Okay, if we could go to the next slide, I want to talk about our approach from the district level. And that is, we tried to use the features of UDL in planning our PD. So really getting our staff educated, familiar, and supported around the universal design for learning. So we started to be really intentional. As we look at our PD plan for the district, we were very intentional about how we brought teams on, how we gave some light touches to some groups, very intentional, reflective thinking around PD. It definitely, we are not a one-shot kind of a approach, very intentional, reoccurring, reflective practice. So we're using that UDL lens to make that decision. We, as Sue mentioned, we are ending year 1 with the UDL cohort. So we've got a 5-year strategic plan. So we're heading into year 2, and we're in the process of planning, and I'll talk in just a minute about that, what that looks like for next year, how we're growing and building some capacity. Something that we know is that, or that we've developed through the course of this year, I should say, is a UDL leadership team and an advisory team. That is so that we have our administrators on board, as well as, and that's what the UDL leadership team will be, some of our leaders within our district, teacher leaders and administrative leaders, to kind of lead this charge, because we know this is a ground up sort of effort, but also from the top down, we would say, is really providing those opportunities and being comprehensive in the approach, so that it's across the district. And our advisory team is a group of people who are kind of our go-to people that we'll pull together to really kind of do temperature checks to see how things are going, to make sure that we have things in place that are supporting people and that we're able to get them what they need when they need it, as far as advancing this approach. And everyone's at a different place. We recognize that, just like our learners. That's the whole crux of all of this, is that, you know, we have a staff, and every staff member's at their own place in learning. They have their own learning style. So as a district, we really have to develop our professional development opportunities around those individuals' learning styles. Much like the students in our classroom, so it's no different with adults. We're all learners. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the PD model we focused on this year, just kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how we approached it. We had 3 areas of focus. We decided the 3 things that were important to us at the beginning of the year was the space design, and then, you know, what our classrooms look like, what is the classroom learning environment looks like, and is it meeting the needs of our students? We wanted to delve into that and learn more about that. We wanted to learn more about executive function skills and supports that we can develop a deeper understanding of what's involved with that and help our students be successful. And then the other area was cultural responsiveness. So everything we did was around those 3 areas. And the format that we used was, first of all, we had all staff, that would be elementary, middle, and high school. All of our buildings had some overview sessions. And the overview sessions, there were actually 4 overview sessions. We had the guidelines, and then the 3 areas of focus. So every single staff member in Frazier really did get I'll call it a taste of UDL, so that they can become familiar with the vocabulary and be able to have those common conversations. And that was really important, that everybody be included and have a beginning level of knowledge, so that they can grow from that, but everyone included. The other piece to that, though, was we have a cohort 1, and that cohort 1 really did a deep dive into all 3 of those areas. They attended several professional development sessions. They around the space design, the executive functioning, and the cultural responsiveness. They saw some experts in the field, learned from them, and really got deep into that conversation. They pulled together as a building cohort. So for instance, a grade level or 2 grade levels at every building, or a department at the middle school came together. So they had colleagues right with them learning this information. Excuse me. Along with that cohort 1 at the beginning of the year developed their own personal learning goal. What was it? Which one of those areas of focus did they want to focus on? What was personal to them in their professional practice that they thought they could improve upon? And that was really key, because that whole reflective learner piece is something that we want our students to do, and we're starting it with our staff, which I think was really, really critical. We have a theme in our district this year: pause and reflect. Everything we're doing, we really want to pause and reflect. Why are we doing something? Is it where we want to go? Does it match our vision? Does it match our strategic plan? Does it match our portrait of the grad? So we really, the reflective, setting those goals and then having that reflective practice to go back and say, well, what steps did I take to achieve my goal? Am I happy with the result? Am I not? What could I do better? Leaning on those colleagues in cohort 1 to discuss and to get some critical feedback and to accolades, all of that wrapped together. So it's a close group that really, I think, have leaned on each other professionally. And I think it's invigorating just as a professional to have that day-to-day contact with somebody who's working on some of your same areas all around the universal design. Another layer that we had this year with our PD model are the coaching support. You'll hear a little bit later from Jared about what the coaches look like in Frazier. But we have 1 coach in every building and 2 at the middle school that really support our teachers. They have time in their schedule, and they really supported this work. So they were a part of cohort 1 as well. So they had the deep dive information. They had the goals. They were not only supporting their cohort 1 people within their building, but the all staff overview sessions, they were also a part of that. So really layering it up and making sure things connected, I guess. And as we end this year, of course, we're planning for next year. And one thing we know, which that is really important to us, is really building capacity. You know, as a district, we can structure the soundest professional development opportunities for staff. But if it doesn't come from the ground up, if the teachers are not passionate about something, and the engagement will be lower, and the implementation isn't accessible. So when we develop this plan, we really recognize that we need to that we want to support that classroom level to make it appropriate. So when we look to year 2, we look at 3 areas of focus that are important to our staff that's very related. We have space design continuing as an area of focus in our district. We're lucky enough to have a bond issue where we are going to be getting flexible furniture. That cohort 1 group will be getting that next year. And then, and they had that deep dive in space design this year. So next year, the rest of our staff will have it. So we're going to be very intentional about bringing all of our staff up to speed, if you will, around designing classrooms, purposeful and intentional for good learning spaces. Assessment literacy, something we've been talking in our district K-12 for beyond this year, but really what are good practices to help students show what they know? What does it need to look like? How do we get the best out of our learners? And so next year we will be talking about assessment literacy. And of course, executive functioning is still something that we want to expand our knowledge around. So those will be our 3 areas of focus next year. We will be doing, again, what we call those light touches, where all staff will get some PD around those topics and do some work around those topics. But we'll also take a new cohort 2, and these are students, these are teachers who are interested in really digging in deeper around UDL and getting some more background professional development, but also then digging into their own personal practice, looking at what their personal goal might be around their practice, and then being willing to welcome others into their classroom, being able to, be that reflective learner as a professional. So along with that, we're going to have cohort 1 with a year under their belt working with cohort 2 as well. So that's a way of building capacity. This year, or I should say next year, this year we didn't have secondary involvement other than our 21st century coach. Next year we did have a new principal. And so they were in a bit of transition at our high school. So next year we will have more secondary involvement, because that's a key group as well, as far as engaging those learners and meeting all of their needs. So that's cohort 2. Another layer that we're adding in new next year is really the coaching development. We have our 21st century coaches in positions where they're part teaching and they're part coaching. But, coaching is a skill, and coaching is not always easy. It's very challenging. You have a lot of different, just like you have in your classroom of learners, you have different personalities. Coaching can be the same way. So we really want to put a layer in where our coaches have some experts to rely on too, to help them with their skills, because we're relying heavily on the building level coaches to support cohort 1, cohort 2, and the rest of the staff with these practices. In the end, next year, end of year 2, our goal, I guess for me at a district level, when I talk about that capacity growth at the building level, that's when I know we're going to be successful. When I see that capacity growing at the building level, and I'm as a district level person, I feel like I will know that's happening when our classroom visits are enhanced. That's a culture building piece where our professionals, you have to have a certain culture and trust opening your door and having colleagues come in. And I'm super excited that we have our cohort 1 and next year our cohort 2 people, because I think they can lean on each other around that classroom visiting and being able to give some critical feedback and see things in action. I think that's we're an isolated profession, and I think this is a great common way to come together and talk about learners. I mean, and we'll have, with the support of the coach and the building principal, we're going to be able to do that. the more that happens, the more the culture changes, and the capacity within the building grows. And I believe it will become even more contagious. And so I think, over the course of the next 5 years, really expanding those practices and levels of understanding. Okay. If there's any.
Donna. Thank you, Donna. That was wonderful. I'm going to actually kick off the first question, and I'm going to let Corinne and Alex know that if we got questions in the Twitter sphere or on the chat to let us know, but I'm going to ask the first one out, so to start us off. But I would just wanted to say full disclosure for anyone who may not know that I work deeply with this team. So myself and my UDL cohorts from Macomb ISD are helping to provide the professional development and guide some of the implementation practices for Frazier Public Schools. So I just wanted to be clear and open about that before I ask these questions. So Donna, you talked about a culture of change and really thinking about trust and how important that is, both from the teacher's perspective and in terms of growth. And I wondered if you could just reflect for a minute how you talked also about variability. So how do you think this idea of addressing variability really leads to the development of trust in a climate?
That's a really good point. Well, like I had said about the staff, all being in different places. Those are our learners, our adult learners. We have to provide a safe atmosphere, a safe learning atmosphere for our adults so that they can choose to engage a little or a lot. The culture within our district is that we are all professionals and we all are growing professionally, but we're all growing at different rates and in different areas. And so we need to provide opportunities in different ways as far as even the mode of learning. We've tried to be very creative this year with our sessions. When I think of our overall sessions, if you call that we did with all of our staff, we've had interactive sessions, we've had virtual sessions where people can learn alone online watching videos and things, or where people are interacting and engaging in activities with their counterparts. I think having that variety of opportunities is what captures people's attention. I mean, teachers as a rule, they really, we're interested in learners. That's why we're in this profession. So I think what the key is tapping into how that adult learner learns best. And as a district, be able to provide different opportunities so that someone can latch on. And as the more you latch on, then you've got something in common to talk with my colleague next door, maybe somebody across the building that I haven't spoken to, but now I've got a common language I can talk around and share. Whereas maybe in the past, if everything was uniform, that wasn't my comfort zone. So I kind of sat back. So I think as a district, that's really something we're striving to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that idea, I know that when we talked about planning for teachers to set their own goals, and you mentioned this earlier, they get to start from a place of passion. And I think that too really builds into that culture. All right, Corinne and or Alex, do we have any other questions from our listening audience for Donna tonight? And if you have one and you haven't gotten to it yet, we can funnel it back to Donna later again too.
Yeah, Sue, I've got a question, kind of to piggyback a little bit on the question that you just asked. You're asking about choosing, again, loving the idea of having teachers choose their area of passion. Donna, I'm curious, the 3 areas, that space design, executive function, and culture responsive teaching, what was the process you used to choose those areas to begin with, and then what information, data, or what process did you use when you shifted then in 1920, decided to shift and add the assessment literacy?
Good question. So we have a district leadership team where we have some instructional consultants. Part of, like, for instance, the space design was, I would like to say, almost like a no-brainer for us because we had that bond issue. And we've had for last several years, we've had our teachers really, we've talked about, we've been talking about personalizing learning for years. So the flexible seating, and people, some people really latched on to that. They really kind of took their own money, went garage sales, found, just any little bit they could do to give different choice within their classroom environment they had been doing. And then with the fortunate bond issue that we had, and we knew we were replacing some classroom furniture, we wanted to be intentional. We didn't just want to go buy like replacement tables and chairs. We really wanted to research and learn the best way to enhance the learning environment in 2019. What things should we have? So that was easy for us to choose that one because we were going to have a big investment. We already had teachers and people dabbling, if you will, on that. They were excited about that. That was a definite area of excitement. So we wanted to capitalize on what was already, gaining momentum. So then we just put some content knowledge behind it. And then cultural responsiveness, when we look at our demographic data and we see some changes in some of our demographics, and we look at we are certainly a data-driven district. We're looking at data, social emotional data, our behavioral data, our academic data. We look at that and we look at our demographic data and we look at some changes that are occurring over the year. So we really needed to be able to be best prepared to respond for learners. And our teachers were, I think we're screaming for that. They, more information. And part of cohort 1, when they went to that, it was so well received that we really wanted to bring it to all of our staff. They came back excited and talking about a speaker they had seen. We're now bringing in a speaker our opening day this coming fall. So you got to read our audience, which I would say is my staff. We have to read our audience and we have to sit. And when I say that, pause and reflect. So we're listening and we're in touch. Like I said, we are a fairly small district. So we are a community. And I would say our central office and our instructional specialists are connected to the people within the district. We're in the buildings, we're in the classrooms. We see what's going on. We see the challenges. We see what we're proud of. And so what we, as part of our responsibility is to kind of gather all that information and sit and reflect and say, okay, how can we move this forward?
So Donna, I think that was an excellent answer. Corinne, I hope that helped answer the question for our audience member. We are going to take it now and move on to our kindergarten teachers, if that's okay with everybody. So I'm going to introduce you to Mandy. And Mandy, I butchered your name the first time. I'm going to get it right this time. Mandy Taylor and Julie Ritchie, and they are going to share with you their year 1 journey in kindergarten. So go ahead, ladies, you're on.
All right. I'm Julie. I'm going to start. We went to so many wonderful conferences and listened to so many amazing speakers. And we're going to kind of take away some of the main things that we learned this year and share with you. So one of the things I learned was, you can see in the slide, foreground versus background. And this was from the Intentional Design for Learning Spaces with Dr. Robert Dillon. And he just talked about how to take your foreground and put it in your background. And if you take a look, this is a picture of my kindergarten classroom. And after I left listening to his wonderful conference, I came back and I took a picture of my classroom. And I could not believe how overwhelming it is to look at. I mean, it's crazy. So I shared this with all my staff members and I spoke about it at staff meetings. And I'm like, this is way too visually distracting. So I took it back to say, okay, what do I need to do about this? I need to make less distractions and take my foreground and put it in the background. So important things that kindergarten students need, of course, are alphabet, colors, and numbers, but I have my standards and things. Now next year, as I'm reflecting, because I'm redoing my classroom, is taking those things and putting them in the background. They're still in the classroom, they're still important, but they're not taking up that foreground where the children are looking. It's it's just so much visual noise up there right now, and I'm super excited. I've already started taking things down and placing things, and it's so wonderful to look at now. But when I do look at this picture, it's just so overwhelming. So I'm super excited to focus on that and put those things in the background this year. Amanda, you want to, okay.
All right. And, like Julie just talked about, we're both doing the same things in our room as we get ready for this new year with this new furniture and all these different choices and things that we can give children. As we went to all these great professional developments, we would come back and try and take something to our room and say, and they were great about not making us feel overwhelmed and like we had to do so much at once. Just take one thing at least and try and see how it works. So one thing that both Julie and I loved is we made a choice board in our room. Our students come in and settle in and have breakfast if they need to or whatever they're doing. And then we start some good morning work, which is usually a review of something we did the day before just to get them going. While we were done with that, the kids would always usually just have one thing to do. And we took this in a different way and we offered them some choices. So we made this board. We would switch it up depending on, what was going on in the room. You can see here, iPad was a selection. They could choose a bin of books or a dry erase board and either practice their numbers or letters or, even draw a picture if they wanted to. And the kids just loved it. They would come up and they'd look at it and, see what was there. And some days we were really shocked at what they picked. We thought they'd always be picking, one certain thing and they'd go for the other thing. So this was just a really nice way to reward them for getting that morning started the right way, get a little review under their belt of what we did the day before.
And have some choice.
Yep.
Okay, we'll move on to the self-regulation. This part blew me away. So we have our kindergarten classes are a little bit large. So and it's just Mandy and I. And we are veteran teachers, so we do a great job with them. But, we do have to teach our students how to read and write. So it can become a little overwhelming for our little 5-year-olds, especially in writing. So we came up with a wonderful idea in order to reach those children that were having such a tough time getting started with their writing or were getting frustrated or did not have the confidence. We decided to put out these red necklaces you can see in the picture, and we just laid them out and we told the students that if they were having a tough time that they could put on a necklace, and that would let us know as teachers that, oh man, this student really needs my help and I want to get to them before that they get frustrated and they just don't want to work anymore. So we decided to do this self-regulation, and oh my goodness, I wish I would have videotaped it. I started crying. These little girls and boys that just had tears in their eyes and were so frustrated would put these necklaces on, and the smiles on their faces, they just lit up because they knew that they were going to get some help.
Someone was there and going to help them.
So, I would pull them up and, I'd cheer them on and they do great. And now not one student for the rest of the school year they do it a little bit, but they don't grab those necklaces anymore. And the confidence is through the roof.
Yeah.
So amazing. So it is something that we both love, that we learned this because I don't know.
In all these years, we've never really done something like this. And we started with writing, but now if we're doing something, different, like our math rotations you'll hear about or something like that, just have 1 or 2 out just so they know if they get stuck, they can go put it on, or if there's a problem that's important.
We know to get right
we can get to them.
So a wonderful take back from all of our wonderful UDL stuff.
Okay, so this is our station rotation model for math. This was kind of like our big project that Mrs. Ritchie or Julie and I worked on this year. I'm used to calling her Mrs. Ritchie at school, sorry. And we have a great new math program, this Eureka Math, but kindergartners really can't read yet, especially towards the end of the year. And what they can read is, mostly their simple sight words and things like that, where they're just sounding out these smaller words. So we would be reading so much to them. And we started to just really kind of go away from that, still teaching the same concepts, but how can we break this apart? How can we get these kids, closer to us and in smaller groups and get to really see what they're doing? I know that Sue came in with some of her colleagues and was able to see this in person. And I think she had a lot of fun. It was fun seeing, how Julie, oh my gosh, I'm gonna do that a million times. How we each got to have a small group with us and we worked, on the concept problem of that day. and we could take it away from the worksheet and line the kids up and have them moving bears and things right there
Hands-on.
and see it. While the other kids got to do some great activities like you'll see here, it all related to what we were doing, but they got to, you know, choose all these different things. And in many of these stations, we did choice again. For example, if they were writing their numbers, they might choose to do it on the dry erase board on Doodle Buddy, or maybe they chose a dry erase board that day. We also had the geo board. They were working on different shapes and a review of shapes like they're going to see right now. Do you want to do it hands-on with the geo board and with the rubber bands, or do you want to go on the app and try it?
And we felt that, you know, we really do look at our UDL guidelines when we're planning all of this. And we do feel that this way of the station rotation model offers multiple options for comprehension, and the kids love it. And we feel like we're meeting the needs of our students.
We're checking up so many more boxes than we did before. It's not like we're really, you know, earth shattering, but we are so much more intentional when we're planning our lessons. That's to us the biggest takeaway from this.
Absolutely. And we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Well, this one was kind of shocking. We would have to come back to our staff and we would have to share things that we learned from our PD, our UDL PD. And one day we had to facilitate a group, and Mandy and I were in different groups. I was, you know, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I was with 5th and 6th grade teachers, and I was kind of nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've really never spoken about UDL. I mean, you would have thought I was an expert. I was talking, I was giving them examples. I was super excited that everything I learned this year has really sunk in, and I'm so excited that I'm able to share it with my staff.
We really were shocked that day because we were just kind of thinking, oh my God, I can't believe we have to do this. You know, are they going to take us seriously? Because they work down the hall from us. We're kindergarten teachers, and it was amazing. And actually the project that I kind of took apart with the 1st grade, we got so excited about it that actually when they do this paper bag princess project, I'm going to actually go in the room and do it with them. It's something when I used to be an art teacher that I kind of connected with it. I thought the kids would be able to really get into it more by visually wearing paper bags and doing different things on it. And then they could get up and share. And so we're excited because, I mean, just from that meeting, when they do this next project, I'm going to come down and be part of it with them. So it was nice to see that all this stuff that we've heard all year and all this work we've done is really coming out, and we're really starting to understand what we're talking about.
It's very exciting. So that's it.
Thank you, Julie and Mandy. That was wonderful. I want to just mention that I was in your room and you are experts. It was such a pleasure to be in the classroom and watch kindergarten students. Now, these are kids who are just turned 6, who were taking charge of their own learning, who really knew how to make choices that benefited themselves. They were actually working collaboratively with their partners. They were talking about the work they were doing, which was fascinating for kindergartners. You know, usually you give them a moment to be at a table together and they're, you know, off chatting and being silly, but these kids were super intentional about the work. They were talking about it. It was just phenomenal. In fact, I took a timer out and timed the transition. So anyone, we should do like a contest, because these kids were able to go from station to station in less than 15 seconds. And I challenge any 5th grade classroom to be able to do that.
You were timing us.
Yeah,
That's
right.
good to know.
I was timing the kids, not you. It was amazing. I do have a question, then I'll throw it out to Corinne and to Alex also. So you talked about how this has shifted your thinking about instruction and thinking about yourself more as a teacher, as a designer, and being intentional about how you look at your instructional practices and plan those learning opportunities. If you had a suggestion for a teacher who was just getting started with UDL, what would you tell them to do as kind of a first step?
You know, what I feel, and I mean, I love this. This UDL guideline is, in this framework, is so important. I mean, I really do read this and study this, and it makes things so much clearer. At first I was like, but now I look at it and I'm like, okay, when I'm planning this, do I have, you know, multiple means of engagement? Do I have multiple, you know, provide multiple means of representation, action and expression, executive functioning? I think this is key. It helps you just,
it's like a little map.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other thing is the way that you brought it to us is start small.
Yeah.
You know, teachers always get that feeling of like, oh gosh, one more thing, I'm already totally swamped. but it's really not one more thing.
No.
It's just a different way of looking at it. And like we just came back and we tried that choice board. Okay, that's great. This
Right.
worked, or we tweaked it. Then we did this. So just baby steps, and then it just kind of all comes
It
together.
does. And just, and having a coach or somebody to bounce things off
Partner,
of
yep.
is amazing, because you have these great ideas and you're able to share it with someone and say, is this making sense? So yes, start small, use your framework, and have a buddy.
I love it. What great advice. And I do think your coach is watching too. So if you want to do a shout out to, who you can.
Yes, we always talk to Sue about her. We couldn't do this without Kelly.
Yes.
She is so good about getting right down to us. We meet on a prep, and just the technology part of it, and just keeping us
She's
on task.
amazing.
She really fills in the holes where Julie and I,
Need help.
need help.
All right. Go Kelly. All right. Corinne, I think you might have a question from the online chat.
I do, and this might be a question it's a question, I guess, for any of the panelists, but Darlene was asking in particular if there were recommendations about conferences or speakers or other resources that you happened to come across that you felt were really helpful in your learning and deepening your understanding around UDL.
And we can open that up to anybody, whoever.
Yeah. For us, we've been just lucky that Sue has planned so much stuff, with her committee and Dr. Anderson and, Ms. Wozniak, because we were going to something almost like monthly or doing things. We had a Schoology. We're on Schoology. We were going back and forth sharing pictures of things we were doing and having almost like a little blog. So for us, we were really busy all year and really have not this year ventured into that.
And we loved all our speakers. And I know that the 1-2-day conference, Sue, what is that called?
Yeah, that's our UDL.
Yes.
In Great Lakes.
That
and
was awesome.
Yeah. And we're doing that again this year, and we'll talk about it at the end of tonight. So if you're interested, we had join us Allison Posey from CAST. We had Joni Degner from BCSC, and we had David Gould from Gould Evans. So it was a nice mix up of folks. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and move on and save your question. If we got more questions, we're going to try to reserve 5 minutes at the end for anybody who wants to ask any of the panelists questions. So Julie and Mandy, when you're ready, you can go ahead and mute.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
And we're going to take it on to Jared McGuffey now, our 21st century coach. And Jared's going to share a little bit of his vision and his journey. And Jared, just for the record, I do love your picture.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you, Sue. My name is Jared McGuffey, the 21st century teacher. And I'm sure that if you are one of the listeners not in Frazier District, you might be asking yourself right now, what in the world is a 21st century teacher? And as Donna mentioned earlier, it's a hybrid teaching position. So we have the opportunity to learn along with the students and the adults. Our current focus this year is supporting the UDL in addition to integrating technology. On the next slide, I'd like just to mention 3 takeaways. So joining our cohort 1, this is a first year for the coaches as well. So we dived in as lead learners, and here's 3 takeaways that I thought were pretty important for me. But this idea of coalition of the willing is this task, is this something that's a big deal? Absolutely. Does it take time? Sure, it does. And what Frazier did very successfully was through their advisory team, through the leadership team, through the MISD support, we provided a very safe, kind of like a challenge by choice, if you will, very low pressure task. So it was key in gathering this coalition of the willing. Who's excited? Who's passionate about doing this work? And then also it was very important and critical in the building level as a 21st century coach, trying to gain this coalition of the willing, trying to build this momentum. Who in their classroom who might not be part of the cohort, what questions might they have? When do they want to join us in the journey? So we share along the way. And also another takeaway was this idea of good teaching, shifting towards intentional teaching. Because I myself was sitting there in some of these PDs thinking, wow, I do this. I've been doing this. And UDL has been around for a little over 20 years. And bottom line, all teachers are UDL specialists in essence. they're good teachers. I mean, they're doing these things because it's good practice, and they're great teachers. That's why they're doing these things. But the question is it intentional? Are we really designing the curriculum to be all inclusive, to include every student? And of course, the knowing doing gap and how to close that. Is that because when you think about learner variability, we know that everyone's unique. We know that they're different. We know that they have different interests, but the UDL framework provides a system, is a roadmap, as we heard Julie and Mandy talk about. It's a systematic way of thinking. So it's more of a process, and it really helps us as teachers reflect on our practice and give us the language to speak about our practice. So there's multiple lenses we can look at. In the next slide, I'd like to talk about just 3 lenses. As a 21st century teacher, we're looking at this through the classroom lens as teachers ourselves, as we get to work with K through 6 students at the elementary, and of course the building level. So leading by example in the classroom, here's a couple of things that I started looking at this year. This idea of developing expert learners, and how do we have students understand what they're processing of what they're learning? How do we help them understand how they learn? And the why behind their learn, and connect those interests and make the content relevant to them. And of course, culturally responsive teaching, we all probably defer to Carol Dweck's growth mindset, and we start as early as K2. In K2, I'm focusing a lot on growth mindset and risk-free environment. This sense of community. One of the 6 C's is citizenship. So how do we build this support around the classrooms? And daily reflection. Almost after every lesson, I'm asking myself, okay, did every student feel welcome? Did everybody learn? Did everybody reach their learning goal? And how do I know? And at the building level, we're talking about building capacity. So what I'm doing in the classroom level, the mistakes that I make, the lessons I learned, can I share that through our cohorts, and for those Coalition of the Willing who are tagging along on the journey, but not officially in a cohort? Of course, in a systematic way, we're sharing practices. We have a shared language. We're trying to focus, and we use this diagram as we reference this to keep that language uniform. And at the district level, the 21st century teachers have an opportunity to meet frequently, and we're able to share our questions, the roadblocks that we might come up, and or our new learnings, whether it's from our teachers or from ourselves. And it's a great opportunity to move forward as a district. Here I have an example of something we did in the 5th grade classrooms. One of the teachers had asked, how do I capture what my students are learning? So we brainstormed a little bit, and we used a tool that many of us are familiar with, Padlet. And as we use Padlet in this sense, we just used it to capture student learning. So after the end of this lesson, students reflected on what they've learned, and they had a chance to articulate that and put that into this Padlet format. If you notice, there's no names, so it's a very safe way of doing this. This could be a way, this Padlet could be a way that your class might ask questions. This could be up on the board and ask questions. So rather than raising their hands, they could just simply write this question and it appears on the board. Padlet is, here's another way of we talked about using Padlet. So you walk in your classroom, you have the learning objective, it's written on the wall. And as a teacher, you might ask your whole class as a whole group, let's read the learning objective. So they had a chance, those auditory learners are having a chance to really hear that. And then you may ask them to turn and talk, look at your neighbor and talk about that learning objective. And of course, they might be trained to ask themselves, what vocabulary in this I can statement do I need to know? Can I already do this? What strategies might I use to be successful in today's learning objective? And after they have a chance to turn and talk, the students can now articulate, paraphrase, rewrite that I can statement in their own words and put it on this Padlet. So within the first 7 minutes, 5 minutes of class, this board can be filled with student versions of their I can statements, and they've all had a chance to hear them. They've all had a chance to share with their peers. So going into this lesson, it's pretty solid that these students are ready. They know what their goal is, and they might have a strategy to accomplish. Here's another tool that we use. Now, in Disney, we did this at a 3 through 6 grade level in New Zealand. So, of course, when we were back in school years ago, we would all have the same textbook. And no matter what your reading ability was, we all had to read the same text. But this New Zealand provides a system where, based on your reading level, it's going to change the text. make the vocabulary more challenging, maybe make it a little bit easier based, and it really differentiates too, and allows the students to really personalize their own learning experience. Great tool for an ELA class as early as second grade. And then if we look at another example here, one helpful means for a 21st century teacher, again, it's all about time. You know, that's what you hear when teachers say, well, I want to do everything I possibly can for my students, but it just doesn't seem like enough time. And the 21st century teacher role allows those luxuries and those freedoms, and allows us to, for example, in this case, survey students. You can see that there's 153 responses. So this was upper L, and this is just one. There was a lot. The survey was much more comprehensive, but if you look at the questions here, the students were able to identify, I learn easier when I'm sitting at a desk by myself, or standing up, or sitting on the floor, or with other students. And what we've done with this data is we've literally, matter of fact, we'll go to the next slide, and we can take a little bit more specific look at students who might want to work with other students. You'll see 41%. 35%, however, just liked the class the way it was, and of course, 22% said, hey, I'd like to work a little more independently. So we took this data and we allow the students to make choices. So our fifth grade teacher, after analyzing, we sat down. She said, you know what, I'm gonna allow these students every day to decide, am I gonna work by myself today on this particular task? Am I gonna work with a partner, or am I gonna work at a group? And it's funny, some of the students that we thought would want to work with their partners, they ended up working independently, and vice versa. And it varied based on what they were trying to accomplish that day, maybe how confident they were in that particular task or not. So some more information, what we did with that data is we kind of evaluated. So I asked the fifth grade teacher, said, you know, before we survey the students, take a guess on what the weakest executive functioning might be. And she was right on. I mean, she knew her students. She said planning task for sure. And as you see, the planning task is definitely, as a class, as a collective group, that was the weakest executive function. So knowing this, you know, there's some suggestions that we provided down below. But you walk away saying, hey, you know what, maybe I need to chunk this a little bit more. Maybe I need to have some checking points. And you know your students, so you might walk up and say, hey, you know, I'm going to check back with you how you were coming along with this learning goal. And if you see the link right here, for those who are watching this recorded version, you could probably pause it and check that out. That is the link you will find to find that student survey. So you can do this in your own classroom. That will wrap up our session. What questions might you have?
Actually, Jared, I'm going to ask people to hold their questions, but okay. Thank you for that, because we do want to get Aaron on before we run out of time. We've got 10 minutes left. So Aaron, I'm afraid you're going to be on speed dial here, but we want to hear from you. We want you to share your voice, and then we'll save the last 5 minutes for questions from the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and just take it to the next slide, and you can go ahead and get started.
I'll just say UDL has been a really refreshing thing and the absolute professional highlight of my year this year. It gave me a chance to connect with staff in a different way through our professional development, connect with a high functioning team, and really, you know, give us a centerpiece to take a high functioning team and have something interesting to talk about, you know, throughout the year as we focus on their stretch goals and our improvement goals. And it also gave me a chance to connect with the other 5 building principals as we planned our PD and worked on our presentations. You've got great principals like, well, they're all great, but like Keith and Sklad, who they get things done early. And so they were kicking out their, sharing out their information early. And, you know, we felt the pressure to, you know, contribute and, you know, add, you know, to their preparations. And I guess the really big thing that I found throughout the year, the theme emerged is that UDL is best practice. It reinforces what you see in great classrooms every day, but it also refocuses us that it's done with pre-planning and intentionality. You know, both Julie and Mandy mentioned that they're much more intentional this year. And we really found that across Disney. You know, you take just like a little thing like morning meetings, which is a best practice. You want to connect with your classrooms, but by rephrasing just the way you ask the questions in morning meetings, you're getting the kids to answer the question differently with intentionality, and you're accessing your students at a completely different level, and paying attention. So I know we have a very short time here. So our next slide has just a quick activity that we did at a professional development. As you can see, we took just, you know, a common theme or a common show, and we applied it to a staff meeting, but we used UDL with that intentionality of how do we know that there are barriers to learning. We know that kids come to us with a mixed bag of needs. So how do we use ingredients of best practice in advance to plan around these things? And we use this in a staff meeting. And it was just one of the most fun staff meetings I've ever been a part of. One of the most rewarding professional developments. And my only, I think, negative is I really felt we could have worked on this for 3 days. And so it's just the time factor of UDL. It accesses our professional, capabilities at a much different level, but we need time as a professional organization and as a professional community to plan for these things and support our teachers with planning, because you see these great teachers who they know these tools are out there and they know their kids need access to these tools. My big question to all of us is, how do we keep providing time for those teachers to do this? So I'm going to cut myself short because I know when I'm in these things, I really like to get to the Q&A. So it's just been a great year, and I've absolutely loved the UDL experience.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I'm just going to share the last 2 slides, and I'll do it as fast as can be. The other big thing that principals were doing was sharing back with the community as well, and making sure that we're keeping the community in the loop. And also sharing with our the Frazier Board of Directors. So each building had an opportunity to share some of the practices they were doing with their Board of Directors, because they are being very intentional about keeping that community in the loop. All right, so here's our chance to go ahead and ask some questions of anyone on the panel, and I'm going to stop sharing. Well, I guess we'll leave the share on, the screen share on, and see if we've got anything from the audience. Corinne and or Alex, what questions do we have?
Hi, Sue. Sorry, I was just trying to get, some people were really interested in the survey on executive functioning, so I was getting that up in the chat. In terms of other questions, we don't have any direct questions of panelists right now. I was wondering a little bit about the size of the cohorts for those intensive cohorts. What were the size, and how were people selected or self-selecting themselves to be involved in those?
Yes, and I will answer that. Donna had to leave. She had an emergency happen at home, so she sends her apologies. She had to scatter out, and I told her I would cover for her, so I guess I'll take that. And anyone who wants to join in on that can. So we did take volunteers from each building. So anyone who wanted to join was asked, to just put their name in. So we did some that Frazier had actually been doing, exploring UDL for a couple of years before this deep implementation. So most of the teachers had some understanding of what it was. And so we just asked for people who were interested and willing and, wanted to take a chance and grow professionally. And so we had 43 people join us. That includes, I think there are 21 classroom teachers and then 20 other people in the cohort, like administrators, coaches, and special ed support folks. So I have a question for the group, and Corinne, if you have something else that you want to that people want to ask, I'd love to hear it. So I just have a quick question for everybody. If you would just talk briefly, each of you touched on it in just a small way, but I'd like to have a kind of a collective conversation about the power of reflection, both for you as professionals, for your community, and then also from the perspective of students. So if you want to just, anyone who wants to jump in, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start. So the reflection, again, this is a practice that we all have done, right? But again, this is a process. So we're creating ways for students to reflect, and also not just to reflect, but to share that. Reflect on our practice as teachers, reflect on their learning as students. And then we're also taking initiatives to collect that data from them. So serving them, how was this lesson today? Did it meet your needs? Through various questions, but and then also reflecting on that feedback that we get from the students. So it's a cycle. It's a constant cycle, and a process and part of our daily planning.
Great, thanks, Jared. Anyone else want to jump in?
Julie and I will jump in for 2 seconds. We were just talking here even about this, is just getting to try some new things out. And then for us, the power of having the partner to talk to and sit down and go, how'd that go? What can we change for next time? What worked? What didn't work?
Reflect on what our lessons are and what we did. And of course, our coach, we bounce lots of things off of her, and she's, gives us great feedback. So that's very helpful.
All right, I got a last minute question in, and I'm going to aim this directly at Julie and Mandy. We have a question from one of the participants who says, do you believe that utilizing the UDL principles has allowed you to include special ed students more?
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. We have such a broader spectrum of the level of comprehension and the different activities and things that they can do. I do have one student in my room.
Same.
And you do too this year. I mean, I can't even tell you the growth these kids have had this year. And I'm proud to say, and I think yours is too, they are right on grade level.
Yep. And
you're not saying you have one special ed student each. You have 12 or so, right, in your class.
Well,
right?
we have all sorts of needs, from speech and language and things like that. Yes. But we do have some kids that even, leave the room for special resources because they need that support so bad. But when they come into the room, they can slide right in with the different activities we're doing.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Lots of needs, definitely.
Yes.
You're right, Sue.
And I'll jump in on that a little bit with the way we use the UDL framework. It really frames like barriers, as all encompassing. So it really almost eliminates the special ed label, and you just start looking at the kids in terms of okay, what barriers are universal that we need to remove for all kids, and it really benefits the whole class, but then especially those with learning needs or an IEP.
Yeah, great, Jared. That's wonderful. I'm going to share my screen again too, because I do have soap that I have to sell here for the end of our work together. Oh my goodness, what happened there? Where did that go? Well, maybe I'm not going to get to do that. But yes, I'm going to just say thank you to everybody tonight. What I was going to say to your comment, Erin, is that we talk about the barriers being, instead of in the student, that the barriers are in the environment. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, that, we have a shift in the way we look at how do we support all students. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. I wanted to mention that the UDL IRN Great Lakes Regional event is coming up. It's October 21st and 22nd in Macomb ISD, and we'll have many of the panelists that and speakers that you heard mentioned tonight. So if you're interested in that, you can go to udl-irn.org. under events, and you can find information about that session. So thank you to everybody, to Jared and Julie and Mandy and Aaron and Donna who had to leave. We really appreciate it. Thanks to Corinne and Alex for taking on the questions for us, and Mackenzie, as always, for getting us organized and out the door in an efficient way. And we'll stop our recording now. So thanks, everybody. All right, guys, I think Maureen's saying thank you. Corinne